everyone, welcome to Movement and Me, an initiative that is designed for budding artists across the world who wish to pursue their career in art. I'm your host Niharika, and on this show you will hear artists talk about their lives and the choices they had to make in pursuit of arts. We will also get to use some tips and key learnings from the lives of these artists, along with a detailed discussion on their areas of interest. So quickly hop onto a journey into the world of arts along with us. Hi everyone, welcome back to part 2 with Miss Manjima Chatterjee, where we are discussing a lot more, including drama in education and who she is and what she has literally done throughout her life through drama and in education and also writing. So in the first part, we did a lot of discussion on what the role of drama in education is, what drama in education actually means, and why do we need drama in education. In this second part, we're going to talk to her a little bit about her background and her interest in writing and much more. So Manjima, this brings me to the next question of mine, which is that you've been quite interested in writing, and I've noticed that you've written a lot and you've actively sought opportunities to write, and you've also recently published a book of yours. So can you talk a little bit about what got you into writing? Why do you want to write? And what is this recent book that you've published all about?
Actually, I do different kinds of writing. I've always been very, very interested in writing, and having had a post graduation in sociology, kind of helped me to gain a handle on academic writing, which is something that I have to be honest, I actively avoided in the first half of my life. But over the last 10 years or so, I've been gradually more interested in kind of moving back towards it. Over the last 7, 8 years, actually. A test played a very big part in helping me to move back into academic writing. So the thing is that it's important for us to be able to share our thoughts, and the arts in India suffer from a very peculiar problem, which is that we have a lot of people who are not practitioners who write about the arts. There are actually very few people who are practitioners who write about the arts. So what happens is that you get an external view, you get a theoretical perspective, but the actual, the brass tacks bit of what our actual transactions are, it's difficult to bring that to the forefront. So you have a very rare Chandralekha who, wrote as well as practiced. But otherwise, our great masters have generally tended not to write. What happens is that then we have their artworks to see, what they've done with their lives, but we don't really get an insight into their thought processes. We don't really get into their methods and what is it that motivates them. So I really felt that it's very, very important to bridge the gap between theory and practice, and that's why it was important for me to engage with that. Of course, I've been writing plays for a while. I started writing in 2005 based on this invitation sent by Writers Block Bombay, Rage Bombay. Rage is a Bombay theatre group, Bombay-based theatre group, very well-known theatre group. They, along with Royal Court Theatre England, were putting together this workshop called Writers Block. It still happens every year. It's a fantastic workshop. In our year, we had Carl Miller and Phillida Lloyd, who are both very accomplished writers and directors, who actually who are our mentors during this program. And we had a fantastic bunch of actors who were there, kind of helping us out with our writing. So that really kind of started me off on writing. And then, in 2013, I was lucky enough to win the Hindu Metro Plus Award. After that, I wrote some more. I haven't been writing in a while. It's not been very. It's not been a very good time. Lots of other things have happened. But playwriting was something that I was always engaged in. And I think as a substitute for the fact that I could not act because I simply did not have the time, 2 kids, house to run, all sorts of things. Um, and then, of course, once with test and a little bit before test as well, I was doing some writing for newspapers and stuff. I started actually getting into the process of documenting dramatic processes as they worked. And then Anurupa Roy of Katkatha, she gave me the opportunity to document a very new kind of art form that is coming into this country now called material theatre. And Barbara Colling of Helios Theatre, she's again a fantastic person and a really great director. To watch her close up and to really kind of document the process from the beginning. That set up a series of writings which appeared in the Unima journal and also in the Hindu and stuff. And then, of course, I was able to transform that into an academic article for Arts Praxis. And so it kind of took off. While I was writing for drama, I'm privileged to know some people in the field of history. History is one field that I'm very interested in. And they were doing an anthology of essays written by people who are not necessarily from academic backgrounds. And they invited me to be a part of it, to write a piece of contemporary commentary. And I wrote a piece on the current state of politics, and that got published in an academic anthology called The Nation, Nationalism, and the Public Sphere. So that happened. From there on, I've been writing long form essays. So it's kind of flowed. It's kind of flowed. The book that you're talking about, there are actually multiple books. There are collections of essays, which I've been a part of. But a book that is mine entirely is the collection of plays. 2 plays on hunger, 2 plays both based on the 1943 famine, but commenting on contemporary issues as well, and on the food policy of India. No more relevant than now, I think, with our farmers being forced out on the streets. So yeah, 2 plays on hunger. One is called Mountain of Bones, which connects folk tales with the present scenario, and another one called 2 Men on a Tree, which is like a documentation of 2 men who are stuck on a tree during the Bengal famine, when the river Damodar flooded. And this is based on a true on a news story. They actually stayed on the tree for a good 4-5 days while rescue operations tried to reach them. So yeah, so this is just a documentation of, this is my imagination of what happened on that tree. So it's a close look, it's an intimate look. Yeah, that's what it is. So yeah, that's the 2 plays that I wrote, and that's what the book is about.
Thank you so much. That actually makes me curious to want to go and order the book for myself and get to reading it. But you pointed something very interesting out at the very beginning of this answer, and you said that not a lot of practitioners engage in writing, and the ones who write are not necessarily practitioners in the field. Why do you think practitioners don't write? Why do you think that happens? And why do you think? I feel like it's an aversion. It's like a fear, or it's an aversion. I don't understand necessarily, but I feel like that's what it is. So can you talk a little bit about why it is, as being one of them?
You know, it's a very interesting question, because I've been asking every single practitioner I meet to write, and I get very different answers, ranging from I don't have the time to no, that's not my thing. But I think my personal take is that practice and documentation require very different kinds of grammar, I think. So practitioners generally tend to feel that this is their engagement with the art form needs to be something which is more immediate, more direct, and the liveness of it is very important. Whereas when you write, you need to be able to step back from it, to be able to look at it with a certain kind of objectivity, which of course is something which you require as a performer as well, but it's a different way of reflecting on it. Also, then writing has its own very specific kind of requirements. You need to be able to structure your thoughts in a certain way. You need to be able to adhere to the rules, and you go with the MLA style or the Chicago style and the this style and that style, and all that can be quite frightening for people who are not used to it. I think primarily performance requires a different kind of language, and documentation writing has a different language. So it's acquiring another language, which is a stress factor, I think, here. And also it's a different kind of discipline. Practice requires you to be on your feet. Practice requires you to think on your feet. Documentation or writing requires you to sit back and spend a lot of time using your body and mind in a very different way. And yeah, I know I find it very difficult. I get very antsy when when I spend too much time writing. And it takes a lot of time for me to kind of really get myself ready to start writing. So actually for me, a lot of the writing happens in my head before I actually get down to the task of writing. And it's yeah, so if I know that I have to prepare an essay or I have to write something, then I would actually kind of go around churning it over in my mind as I do things, and maybe keep writing little notes. I'd only sit down to write when things are kind of forming in my head, because then I would have to kind of push myself to say, okay, now I'm ready. Yeah, playwriting is a different process, because playwriting, I'm following my own directions. I'm not, I don't have to adhere to anybody's guidelines. So that's different. And for me, playwriting also happens in this way. It often happens through hearing a conversation in my head, which I just have to put down, or encountering a piece of news, which I just have to kind of deal with. And then in bits and pieces, the conversations start to come together, and then I kind of flesh it out and do more with it. But yeah, so it's just, I think, it requires a different kind of discipline, and requires you to learn that language. That's what it is.
So this brings me to the next question, which is about your work on the ground in the field. You started a foundation, an NGO actually, called the Kutumb Foundation, which works towards empowering young children into becoming independent thinkers. Can you talk a little bit about what prompted you to start the foundation, and how do you think it helps, and why do you think it's important for you to do this work?
Well, actually, we started Kutumb in 2002 as a group of young people fresh out of college in our first jobs. Actually, I was in my post-graduation at that point of time. This was the brainchild of Kapil Pandey, who was someone I knew in college but wasn't really very good friends with. But we both had an interest in education, and we started communicating with each other while I was in Bangalore. He told me at that point in time that he was thinking of doing this, because he used to go running in Khan Market. His father was in the IRS, so he stayed in Pandara Road, and he used to go running to Lodi Gardens, and he would frequently see these children there and wonder what he could do with them. So he would pick my brains on that, as a teacher. And when I came back to Delhi in 2001 to pursue my post-graduation in sociology, at that point of time, he got in touch, and then in 2002, we kind of started talking, and with a few of his other friends, about 7-8 of us together, we started Kutumb. The intent at that point of time was, and remains to this day, to kind of open up the possibilities, all kinds of possibilities, to these children, to say that even if you come from a background which is which is not the most privileged, you have you have networks that are available to you that enable you to make use of whatever comes your way to do better in life, right? That's a very basic thing. It's not just about education. Because frankly, if you kind of go into the whole question of the way that, for instance, the government defines education and the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and all, there's a lot of focus on basic literacy, which I don't think has served us very well. Because the understanding of basic literacy is the ability to, sign your name. Which frankly, I mean, if you can recognize an image, you can do it. It doesn't tell you much about what people are actually reading. So when we started out, we had kids who came to us with absolutely, I mean, they were in grade 8, 7 and 8, and they didn't know how to read. So our focus in the first days was basically three-pronged. We were firstly focused on ensuring that students learned to read and write, like properly read and write. Two, we wanted them to understand what they could do with the reading and writing skills that they had acquired. So to kind of open up the possibilities for them. And three is we wanted them to be able to actually cultivate a sense of a future, which is connecting with the point number 2, to say, develop a passion, develop a skill, go somewhere with it. I think life improvement, when we're looking at improving people's lives, it's not just about economic improvement. It's not just about, like Skill India says, you learn a skill and you go out and you practice it. It's not just that. It's also about what kind of person are you going to be? How are you going to contribute towards society? So in Kutumb, from the beginning, we had a student parliament. We had a circle where we all sat together and took decisions, where kids actually learned to take turns to speak and slowly came to realize that they could take decisions. And the decisions did not only have to be taken by Bhaiya Didi. As a result of that, today, the large number of people who are running Kutumb are all Kutumb's ex-students. There are people who have, there are some of them have other jobs and they come back and contribute. Some of them have opted to work with Kutumb because they have, they picked up drama and education skills or football skills, and they want to train. So we have a kid, I mean, he's not a kid anymore, he's a young man, Lalit Ram. He was teaching football in a school, and he was a sports teacher there, but then he opted to quit that and come back to Kutumb, and he's training children from Ghevra, from Saket, from Nizamuddin, from across different parts of Noida, different parts of NCR. He now has a dedicated set of coaches under him, whom he trains, and then he supervises their work. So it's fantastic, and he sees the benefits of the work he's doing. So for him, this is much more satisfying than the work he was doing elsewhere. We also have a puppeteer now from our first batch of students. She's doing so well. She's working with Katkatha. She's the most foul-mouthed little girl who constantly fought with everyone, and it's amazing. She's supporting her family. She's put her brother through college. She's a fighter. She's a fantastic person. I'm so proud to have known her. We've managed to send children abroad to learn more, to explore their opportunities. So we have managed to push children to move in the direction of being who they want to be. One of our students is now a dance facilitator who teaches modern dance across schools in NCR. She's one of the most respected teachers in the dance school where she teaches. These kids are, another one is a chartered accountant. These kids are doing really well, and they have become inspirations for the next generation of kids who are coming up. So for us, the approach was always about inclusion, making sure that every kid was able to feel like they were a part, not just of the learning and the process, but also of the decision making with regard to their own lives. And that is something that we've always kind of focused on. So I do think that work is important. I myself have not had a lot of contribution to Kutumb in quite a few years now. Not since my children were born and growing up. It's always been very sideways. So I kind of come in, I do a workshop. I'm available to them for conversation. So every so often someone will pick up the phone and say, Didi, there's a crisis. So I'm there. But I've not really been involved with the day-to-day for a very long time. We have a lovely set of people who are running the show, including a lot of volunteers and employed people who are Kutumb's alumni. So yeah, I'm very happy to say that I'm not needed.
But I think you are the go-to person in case, there is an issue or like a crisis at hand, because I know you personally and you're good under pressure and during a crisis. So it's great to have you on speed dial just in case something goes wrong. So that is nice to hear. So that kind of brings us.
Thank you for that vote of confidence.
No, it's actually true. I've seen your work, so I can vouch for that as well. So this kind of brings us to the end of the entire podcast interview. And thank you so much for all the insights and information that you've given us. Before we leave, I have one last question to ask you, something that I want you to sort of, give to the people who are watching this interview. So as a drama person, as an educator, what would you like to say to the people who might be interested in pursuing arts or even drama in the future, the upcoming budding artists?
Well, I would say that I think as far as being an artist is concerned, we have too few artists who are who choose to be artists. A lot of people who are in the arts are sometimes a little directionless because they are in this space without really knowing what it is they want to do. Not every artist is meant to be a performer. Some artists are also meant to be teachers. And there is not much scope for training in that space. Some of us are trying to change that. We are working towards developing curriculum that helps create possibilities for arts in education. I think as an artist or as an arts teacher, it's important to remember that a tradition is only as good as the next person it comes to. A tradition must bring change. Change is the only constant in all our lives, and that's as it should be. Even in our, even in India, when we follow the Natya Shastra, the Natya Shastra is not a book which tells us that everything is carved in stone. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It tells you to keep to the basic principles. It tells you to remember the reason we are here. One of the first things that the Natya Shastra says is that this is the fifth Veda which does not follow the principles of caste division. It is open to and available to all people across gender, caste, ethnicity, all boundaries. The fifth Veda is the Veda that unites all the others. I think that is a purpose of the arts. The arts cannot ever be owned by any community. They cannot be barricaded in. The arts belong to everyone and they must be inclusive. Artists must be inclusive. And artists must never forget their roots. I think as long as we stay true to our roots and are open to change, keep our level of empathy high, keep our possibilities open, we would always find the means to be happy and to be satisfied. And that's the one thing that I'd like to say to everyone out there. Never stop yourself. Never tell yourself that you've done everything you possibly could have. There's always that one more thing that you need to explore. And if you're an art teacher, remember this is true for your students too. Thank you.
Wow. No words, speechless. So I'm just gonna end on that note because I think that's a very high bar you've set. Anything I say is never going to sort of reach that point. So thank you so much for all of your insights. Thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us today. Also for all the tips and ideas that you've given all the educators out there who wish to try and use some drama techniques in their classes. Please try and understand the purpose of the drama tools. Just don't implement them because then there's no point of implementing them. It would be very nice if you try to understand the purpose behind each of these exercises so you get the maximum out of them. On that note, thank you so much, Manjima, for joining us here, and thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Niharika, and all the best to you and your platform. You're doing some excellent work.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for tuning into Movement and Me, an initiative that is designed for budding artists across the world. To continue receiving notifications on our latest episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel Natya Mandalam or look us up on Apple Podcasts or Spotify for more information. I'm your host Niharika, and I'll see you all next week.